This video is sponsored by my OnlyFans, where I do my meaningful sex educational content, fitness, health, nutrition, relationship advice, and more. And hi guys, and welcome to Gidget Reviews, and to this, Sanguineous Meets The Emperor. This is chapter 18 from the new book Echoes of Eternity, and we are going to listen to this exact part where Sanguinius meets the Emperor. They do talk to each other, which is absolutely awesome. I think this is the very first time, but correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I think that this is the first time that they meet. So let's hear it, without further ado, and we're going to discuss whatever we can draw from this meeting. So yes, starting.
Many years ago, during the Great Crusade, Sanguinius. He went alone. No army of faithful followers marched at his back. No ceremony marked any stage of his journey. He went into the desert alone, inured to the hardships of the wasteland in a way no mortal could ever hope to be.
Hey, Chris.
And like all moments such as these, few and far between as they were, later there would be stories. This journey, and the meeting at its end, would be refracted into a spillage of variant tales, some of which held an authentic core, far more of which were lies, destined to become enshrined as truth. The Revenant Legion would hear many of these tales, filed down and muddled by their own guarded, uneasy hope. They had nothing else to rely on. Word would reach them through brief exchanges between expeditionary fleets in the deep void, and across shrieking astropathic ducts. The impressions of half-mad psychic men and women channeling their senses into the unreliable warp. For a time, all the Revenant Legion would have were stories of transcendent choirs and cheering crowds.
Thanks,
A scene they could all too easily believe, and one that sank unpleasantly into the silt of their troubled hearts. But the truth, if such a thing really matters when it's always the lies that spread instead, is that he went alone. It was his choice to do so. He had questions to ask, though he feared the answers he'd receive, and he had a bargain to strike, upon which there would be no compromise. Sanguinius had never seen a spaceship before, not outside the fractal impressions of them that sailed in his waking dreams. This one, sitting on the desert plain with its golden armor baking in the sun, had the suggestion of vulturishness. It was a thing of power and efficiency, blunt and brutal. Fire made it fly, not any notion of grace. Figures clustered around the craft's landing legs, where the ship's great metal claws gripped the radiation-soaked dust of the wasteland. These men and women were plated in the same gold as the ship, rendered upon their bodies with painstaking artistry. My father's guardians, Sanguinius thought.
What a description.
And what a thought it was. Not only that a being such as his father required guardians, but that he had a father at all. All the years of wondering at his own heritage, devoid of insight into his origins, and here, at last, was the truth, standing in the shadow of a vessel from the void. He leaned into the desert wind, stretching his muscles and rising on a thermal of bitter breeze. The temptation was there, like it always was, to soar, to break free of the ground and his responsibilities, taking to the sky and seeking distant lands where the secrets of old wars lay buried. Today that urge was both stronger and weaker. His heart was ill at ease with what this meeting would mean, but nevertheless, he burned to know what lay ahead. He arced groundward, landing lightly with a scuff of his boots across the earth and a final furling of his wings. Dust swirled around his shins as he stepped forward. The golden figures carried weapons, a panoply of axes and spears and hard-caliber firearms. Sanguinius carried only his sword, undrawn, riding low on his hip. "Welcome to Balfora, outlanders." He spoke Enochian, the tongue of his people, the pure. He wondered if the outlanders would understand him, or whether they would be forced to rely on hand gestures and awkward mimicry. "My son," said one of the golden ones, somehow speaking it silently. He felt his father's voice for the first time as one of his own thoughts, a sensation rather than speech, backed by a tremendous feeling of suppressed force. The golden man, if he was a man, that sent the contact, seemed to be making significant efforts to restrain himself, or to contain the power within himself. There was more there, though. My son rhymed with my weapon, and rhymed with the ninth, and rhymed with other concepts that Sanguinius couldn't pass from the core of the man's meaning. A lifetime of perspective was bound up in that contact, and Sanguinius sensed only the gulf between his father's silent words and the meaning behind them. But he felt no threat in the touch of mind upon mind. Confidence, impatience, love, caution, approximations of those where words couldn't quite convey the actuality. It was all in there. The man, and he did seem like a man, dark of skin and hair, smelling of metal and sweat, in possession of a heartbeat, walked closer. "I am the Emperor," the man said as he stepped out from the spacecraft's shadow. "And I am your father." "Father," the man had said, the word rhyming in silence with master, with shaper, with creator. Sanguinius met the Emperor's eyes. What he saw there, glinting in the light of his father's gaze, was the answer to a question he'd never even considered. This being, this Emperor, was human. But he was not exactly a man. "I see the light of many souls in your eyes. Many men, many women." The Emperor smiled. "Is that what you see?" He spoke flawless Enochian, but that perfection was itself a flaw. He spoke the tongue with the same dialect and inflection as Sanguinius himself. Either the Emperor was pulling the meaning from the angel's mind, or imprinting meaning upon it. Whichever was true, he wasn't really speaking the language at all. Nor was Sanguinius entirely certain he could see the man's mouth move. "I have sought you for many years," said the Emperor. And behind those words Sanguinius sensed the cheering of crowds and the burning of worlds. His blood ran cold in the desert heat. "I've seen shades of this meeting many times in my dreams," Sanguinius confessed. A heavier gust blew from the east. He instinctively lifted a wing to shield himself from the gritty air. The Emperor's eyes followed the movement. He began to circle Sanguinius in a slow walk, one gauntleted hand reaching out, fingertips running down the angel's feathers. Sanguinius's pale gaze tracked his circling father, but his wings rippled with discomfort each time the Emperor moved behind him out of sight. "You are uneasy," said the Emperor. "That is natural, my son. I have come not only to liberate you from exile, but to ease your heart and mind with all you need to know." Sanguinius felt a lifetime of questions trapped on his tongue. There was one, however, that was always going to break free first. One question above all others had plagued him and haunted his people since the tribe of pure blood had discovered him in the wildlands. They worshipped him for his strength and beneficence, but they feared him for the question that now lay unspoken between father and son. "Ask," said the Emperor. "Ask the question I sense lying upon your tongue." The angel pulled back from his father, not furling his wings, but spreading them. With sudden passion he beat a fist against the animal hide of his breastplate. A lone feather, swan-white, drifted in an arcing dance down to the dusty earth. "What am I?" "You are my son," said the Emperor. And again meanings and concepts danced beneath those words. "You are my son" was overlaid by "You are a Primarch," and "You are my 9th General," and "You are a component of the great work," and "You were stolen by the enemy," and, most unsettling of all, "You may have been changed by them." "I don't know what you mean." "You will," the Emperor assured him. "You are the death of faith," Sanguinius replied. "That I know." The Emperor regarded him before speaking. "Yes," his father agreed, "and also no." "How do you know of such things?" "I told you. I have dreamed of this day. Fragments, shadows, suggestions. Sometimes they come to me, fierce with emotion yet raked clean of detail." "Faith is a weapon," said the Emperor. "A weapon that the species cannot be trusted to wield." "My people revere me as their god," Sanguinius replied. "That brings them a measure of peace. No doubt to you and your sky-sailing kind, we are nothing but primitives, roaches in this poisoned desert. But I reward their faith in me. I am their servant. I am mercy when my people need it most, and I am death to their enemies." "That does not make you a god, my son." "I never said I was a god. I said my people believe me to be one." Sanguinius stared into his father's inhuman, too human eyes. "My people, the pure, are to be left in peace. Whatever pacts you and I swear this day, my inviolate condition is this. No ship will enter Balfora's heavens without my mandate, and no interference will be permitted to the clans of pure blood without my permission. We have carved out the solace of peace here together. You will not threaten it, father." The Emperor nodded, not in agreement, but in sudden understanding. "That is why you fear me, is it not? You fear the endangerment of what you have achieved here." "I speak of loyalty and love," the angel said gently. "And you speak of achievement." "Am I wrong?" asked the Emperor. "I fear for the lives of my people who deserve only peace. A peace we have fought so hard for. Behind your words, I hear the triumph of cultures that see you as their savior. But I also hear the razing of cities and the burning of worlds. I hear the dirges of faiths now forbidden, and the mourning of those nations that followed them. Am I wrong?" The Emperor said nothing. Later, many times over the decades to come, Sanguinius would think back on those words. For all the purity of the Emperor's intent, there were so many compromises. Faith could not be tolerated, except for when it could. Religions were drowned in the ashes of defiant worlds, except when their usefulness aligned with the great work. The Emperor needed the Martian Mechanicum, and he allowed them to worship him as the Omnissiah, the incarnated avatar of the machine god. Perhaps necessity carves holes in everyone's principles, human and god alike. But all of this would come later. There on the desert sands that day, the angel had more questions. "You keep looking at my wings. Wings, I note, that you and your followers do not possess." Sanguinius scanned the men and women still waiting by the landing craft, then looked to the Emperor once more. "Do I bear these by your design, or by some twist of misfortune?" The Emperor looked at him with the keen eye of an inventor assessing a prototype, as well as the forgiving gaze of a father, a seamless blend. "You are exquisitely wrought," said the Emperor. "Exquisitely and painstakingly. which was no answer at all. "What am I?" Sanguinius asked again, this time with an edge to his tone. The Emperor's voice softened, as did his expression. Only his eyes were unchanged, remaining lit by inseparable, uncountable souls. "You are a gamble against the death of hope, my son. You are a roll of the dice at the end of the game. What do you call yourself?" He called himself by the names his people had given him. First, the nicknames of youth, then the name he'd received as he grew to lead the clans of pure blood, a name sacred to the tribe that had come to view him as their god, a name that marked him as theirs in spirit, if not in birth, meaning of the pure blood. "Sanguinius." The Emperor nodded. "Sanguinius. You are a Primarch, a component of the great work, stolen from me and torn from its place, denied to me all these years. I have need of you, my son. Humanity has need of you. You are instrumental to the species' salvation. I have come to lift you from these dry roots, to take you into the stars, to give you a legion to command and a future to fight for." Once more Sanguinius heard the adulations of crowds in bright sunlight, and the cries of populations on burning worlds. He asked then what no other Primarch had given voice to. Even Angron, upon his discovery, would act without asking the question Sanguinius now asked. "What if I refuse?" The Emperor seemed to weigh this. "You will not refuse. I know your soul. Here you've saved tens of thousands of lives. With me, you will save billions of lives on millions of worlds. You will save the life of every human yet to be born. That is not something you could turn your back on." They stared into each other's eyes, father and son, creator and created. Neither argued against the truth of the Emperor's words. "I want something from you. I want your oath." The Emperor was silent, allowing his son to continue. "Do you swear, on whatever oaths hold value to you, that you will leave the clans of pure blood in peace, untouched by your designs unless they desire otherwise, free to exist as they already exist, believing whatever they choose to believe?" The Emperor hesitated. Sanguinius saw the calculation in his father's eyes, and he wondered, is he taken aback by the love I bear for my people, or is he merely considering alternate avenues around this obstacle in his great work? The Emperor finally spoke. "You have my promise." Sanguinius closed his wings. "Then let us speak of the future, father." And so they did. Chapter 9.
Okay. That was quite a lot, but not a very long chapter. We managed to go through it 19 minutes. Wow. Okay, guys, so let us discuss now some of the things that were said here. First, the way that the Emperor was described is a bit different, if not maybe a lot, than I've previously heard at least. He is described with a bit darker skin, humanized, not so humanized. I mean, there were these elements where we see in other books, basically not, pinning down the exact look of the Emperor, because he does changes, and it seems like he is influencing the perception based on the person that is staring at him. So some of the Primarchs could see him one way, some others another way. I'm like wondering, why is his skin described as darker all of a sudden? I haven't heard that before. And hi dear Clayton, it's you. And of course, also during this time of listening, Primarchs came, dear Ivy as well. So dear Clyde and dear Ivy, welcome. And yeah, that is interesting to me. Then the way that the Emperor walks around him and even touching his wings is very interesting. It feels like the Emperor didn't know that Sanguinius is going to turned out the way that he did. So I think that it comes to a bit of a surprise to the Emperor that Sanguinius does have wings. And maybe that is one of the things that he that he says that he says the enemy changed you, maybe those are one of the changes. Who knows? Because as far as I know, Sanguinius' story, those wings only help him achieve victory. And no problem, dear Kaito. Don't worry about that. I'm super happy that you're here with us, though. So yeah, that's one thing, guys. And it's just very interesting, the whole conversation. Sanguinius is trying to lead it into the position of, okay, I'm aware that I'm your son now. I can feel it, because obviously he does see in type of a visions who is the emperor, what has he done, what it will be done. So he sees that there's going to be a lot of casualties, and the emperor is going to wreak a lot of havoc during his route. But Sanguinius also can see that will lead to some kind of a saving of lives, how the Emperor presents it. I'm pretty sure that Sanguinius cannot see that further out in the future to really know the bigger picture of it all. So he sees glimpses of what it could be and what it has been, but he cannot tell the end result of things. I don't think so. It doesn't seem like it. And the Emperor just cannot reply, really. I mean, he cannot give a solid answer to the question, what is Sanguinius? I mean, he says that he is his son, he is a Primarch, he said that a bit later, but he cannot answer straight, because he's just not sure about every aspect of his sons. And the fact that they did landed on different planets changed them. I mean, just look at Vulcan, even. For example, his skin is ash, like ash, basically, very dark. And Magnus is red, obviously. There is some kind of a characteristic to each and every one. Oh, my apologies, guys. Of the Primarchs. So yeah, that leads me to believe that the Emperor is surprised and kind of not knowing of all the changes that his sons do have because of their locations. And here you can see the nobility of Sanguinius, because he just cares, mostly it seems, about Baal, all of his people, and their well-being. And he cares more about that uh, in comparison to the emperor's agenda and goal. So that's interesting. I mean, he decides here to be loyal to the emperor because he kind of feels that this is his destiny and duty. I mean, it's implied, it's not said directly. But most importantly for him is his people and what they achieved there. They really achieved something great there. So Sanguinius does not want this to be compromised, which speaks a lot about him. I'm wondering now, knowing what I know about the Primarchs, who is really the most noble? Because you see that also in Gilliman, that he cares about his people. I'm not sure who cares more, I really have to compare. But so far, I mean, Sanguinius does have a lot of qualities like Gilliman does. He also has the wings, so there's that. But yeah, it's a fascinating conversation that just spawns more questions as well. Well, like always. Check in your comments. Is it possible that the shaman theory could be true from the description? That would mean that the emperor is from a fisherman village in ancient Anatolia. Well, as far as I heard, because this part of the canon is so old, we have to take it with a bit of a grain of salt. You know, there's another a rumor or potential origin of the emperor where he's just like basically he came from the Catan or something like that. So I don't know which one is really canon to this point. But yeah, Sanguineous seeing in the eyes of the emperor a lot of men and women. I just think that that is what the emperor does. I mean, he rules. He did kill a lot of people, men and women, in some way, shape, or form. So there's that. Really. I just wondered who are the other golden ones. Oh, Jesus. How can I wonder that? They're probably the freaking custodies. But there's also women there. And of course, out of nowhere, something did had to go into my eye for some reason. Yeah. So yeah, guys, I'm still almost at the middle of this book. There's some key moments that are really interesting. Of course, we already went through the last and final battle between Sanguinius and Angra, and that was one of the most epic things that I ever listened to, listened to, you know, in terms of Warhammer. So yeah, Horus Heresy books still the best. We will see how the next Sanguinius book is going to be, which should come out before the end of the year. But I hope that I can also finish with this. It's a huge book. It's 15 hours and 50 minutes. Crazy, almost 16 hours of a book. Really, there's some filler here as well, which I just cannot appreciate because I just can't. I just don't really like filler with other side characters. They're not that important. There are some characters you can argue they're not that like super BC characters, but there are also some stories that I'm like, what are we looking for here? We're searching for some. No, what's happening? Like pretty much, you know, I drift off. My mind just drifts to somewhere else, which is not good when you have something to read or watch or whatever, you know. So I wish they can like tighten those books up and not make them so freaking long. Who has this time? I mean, I'm doing this while I train or walk outside, but still, it takes a lot of time for me to get through one of these. So, yeah, guys, this is an awesome speech. I mean, one of my most favorite things about Warhammer in general is everything to do with the Primarchs and everything to do with the Emperor. And when we have a meeting, especially the first one, just fascinating. I have to search out the others in whatever books they are. And maybe we can check that and make some, you know, some conclusions about the Emperor. Who is he further on? So far, nothing that I've heard about the Emperor ruins what I've already what I already discovered and learned about his character. So far everything pans out. Mostly what I have learned so far, that he's just the best father pretend of the year. But yeah, what to tell ya, guys? I already discussed this, but it's a long topic. There were hints here that he is expressing himself also as a father, but let's be honest, I mean, him keeping his vow to Sanguinius, not to really bother with vow in any kind of a way, unless the people of vow want to, that's not really much for him. He has countless amounts of planets that he has conquered. He's ruling the whole mankind, so that's really not a huge compromise for him. You know, it's not like, oh, I'm going to say this. I mean, it's not like for Sanguinius to be like, sorry guys. I mean, for Sanguinius, if he thinks that he is putting this condition in front of his dad with the saying that, well, this is my planet, don't touch it, it's not really much. So Amps is like, oh, I have to leave my son's planet alone and people, and in exchange I have a Primarch? one of the most badass ones? I have to think about it. I thought about it. Yeah, so it's not a big deal for him to make this compromise, but Sanguinius does seem a bit naive, and well, it just comes from his lack of experience with such beings, and just being able to reach some kind of a utopia in his on his planet, and seeing something that's a lot more sinister and calculating than that. Yeah, I think he's a bit naive here. But when he got on the train, he must continue with it sometimes. So he remained loyal to the very end, as you know. And that's actually the book's cover. It's really awesome. He just trying to hold the eternity gates by himself. What a guy! And it just sad even more because the freaking horus was upgraded with the demon powers. Sanguinius already killed Angron by this point, fought that demon. Totally forgot his name right now. Fend off the gates, and at the end of the day, he's going to fight his brother who is already upgraded. It's just not fair. He did so much and gave his all. But anyway, that's why I hope that they're going to bring him back somehow, because the Emperor can. He can do that. He brought Gilliman, you know, when he was rotting and at the same time dying from the god blight, and he completely brought him back. So why not bring the rotting body of Sanguinius, which is on Baal somewhere in the golden coffin, you know? And hi to Deepan. Sorry that you came to the stream late, but you can always watch from the beginning. And Ivy says, so Amp is like a cat in a way. If he chooses not to touch something, that's because he's bored. If he did want to, he could poke any planet and throw it off the table. Kinda. But let me know what you think, guys, in the comments. Who do you think is the most noblest? Noblest Primarch. Who's the most immature? I'm thinking about topics. To discuss these topics, but I really have to go to each and every one to be able to answer that question myself. But yeah, you can comment down below, guys, for that. And thank you so much for watching. If you like, support me, PayPal, Patreon are down below, and of course OnlyFans, where you get my meaningful sex educational content, fitness, health, nutrition, relationship advice, and more. My personal physique updates and my personal help is there, guys. With that being said, I hope I can see you tomorrow. Bye, guys. Love you. This video is sponsored by my OnlyFans, where I do my meaningful sex educational content, fitness, health, nutrition, relationship advice, and more.